Good morning, MLE community, and welcome to My Left Ear. I'm Carrie Freeman. It is Friday, December 23rd, 2022, the last big holiday of December. So today is different. I'm not going to do political stuff today. Today is completely different. I'm going to be fully human today. And this is called Writer Beware, because I'm finally ready after 2 weeks to share part one of this very traumatizing experience I had. Because I think one of the reasons I'm doing it is I actually do want to show up fully human. And I want to share with you like how I'm processing it, because I help people process stuff, and I'm human, so sometimes there's trauma, and I've been processing, and I thought it might be helpful to someone out there. So it's not just some like ego trip or venting, oh my God, this happened to me. No, it's much bigger than that. So that's what I'm doing. So this is a little bit different and very personal. It took me, the actual event that began some trauma for me, and I don't say that lightly, was 2 weeks ago. And I've had to, just go through a lot of stuff and talk to a couple of really good friends. But I processed something yesterday that made me ready to do this video. And it's a quote by Albert Einstein. And if you've been watching me for a while, you know I really like Albert Einstein. So he wrote, this is not going to seem like it applies, but it does for me. He wrote, if you want your children to be intelligent, read them fairy tales. And one thing I've learned, especially since COVID, for a myriad of reasons, is that basically I'm a storyteller. I like stories, and I can whip up a story by just going to Starbucks, because I feel like there's adventure everywhere, and I feel like there are stories everywhere. It's kind of like, I'm not comparing myself to Seinfeld at all, but that's about what comes to mind, that everybody loved the Seinfeld show because they did stories kind of like about nothing. Well, I'm not exactly like that, but I relate, because they made it entertaining. All right, what would seem to be not entertaining, the Seinfeld show. So I think I kind of do that myself. Anyway, this is how I grew up. I grew up with my parents reading to me. My father, the comic, and those of you who read my book, and there's still some books available, by the way, he actually would read me fairy tales in different dialects, because that was his skill. He could do all kinds of characters in different dialects, and they were perfect, and made me laugh and laugh and laugh. My mother gave me books from the earliest age, and then one of the things my father did is that he was very clever at helping other people in the entertainment business craft their act, help write them, kind of show them the comedy moments where the laugh's going to come, blah, blah, blah. So I watched all of that, and it shaped me. So when events happen, I will turn them into a story. Sometimes they're funny and compelling at the same time. Sometimes they're just compelling, but I often try to bring humor into whatever I'm doing, because that's what keeps people entertained, I believe, a little bit of humor. So I'm going to share with you part one of this experience that I'm still processing, because I've been, I needed to look up the difference between slander and libel, and I know somebody out there knows the answer to that, but I wrote down, and I could be wrong, so I can be wrong, and don't jump on me. I've been slandered, that would be in print, cheated and abandoned, and the story is stunning. You know, when I said I want to be fully human, there was a man who is deceased now, and he was a best-selling author and speaker, and his name was Leo Buscaglia. And Leo was on TV, he was on Oprah. I mean, he was everywhere. And he was known as the love doctor, but he had a PhD. I mean, he was a very learned man. And his belief is that we need to love each other and hug each other. And he was a delightful human being. One day I wrote him a letter, and he wrote me back, handwritten, and we became pen pals. And then we got to meet, because he did a documentary and he invited me to it, and it was a beautiful thing. He hugged me. So the hug doctor hugged me, and then he died. So Leo really talked about being real and being fully human. You know, no shame, be fully human, feel it. So that's what I want to share. Now, the other thing that I want to share is something called NLP. NLP stands for Neuro Linguistic Programming, and that's a mouthful. And I studied it. I have the certificate, blah, blah, blah. But there was something about NLP that I particularly loved, and I use it all the time, and you may use it too. It's about the learnings. That's what they called it, the learnings. So when something negative happens, what are my learnings from this thing? And that really helps, okay? All right, now, I'm going to start off this thing about my history with writing a little bit, because this is extremely entertaining and may even shock you. I've been writing for years. So many, many years ago, when I was much younger, I wrote a story. I wrote an article, an opinion piece, because Time magazine, I actually still have a copy of it. Time magazine came out with a cover that had a pig in a three-piece suit. And it said, "Are men pigs?" And at that time, there were a lot of women saying, "Men are pigs, men are pigs." It was like a common comment. And I always thought it was not like the right way to go. So I wrote an article called "Men Are Not Pigs." Now, I saw an ad in a local newspaper in California that said, "We're looking for articles on relationships between men and women." Great, my article is perfect. So I sent it in, and they loved the article. The magazine was called Pure, a brand new magazine, so there was no way of researching it. And they paid me $600, which was a lot of money. And I was published. I mean, I was so excited. I was published. So they sent me the magazine with my article in it. Now, sit down, because the magazine was pornography. It was owned by Larry Flynt, the famous pornographer. They made a movie about Larry Flynt. He went First Amendment rights, billionaire publisher of pornography. And I didn't know that. Well, what they did was they took my writing and they turned it into porn. So they kept my name on it, and they said, "I really don't want to say some of the things that are in this article," but they made me sound like a slut. And I'm telling you, it was shocking. So I sued Larry Flynt. I'm not a snowflake. I sued Larry Flynt, and I was a secretary. So I got kind of a lousy attorney. I think if I made it a movie, he might be Woody Harrelson in the movie. This attorney kind of had surfboards in his office and skates, and he was like, but that was the best I could do. And when we got to the court, I got a female judge, and she said, because I remember the moment well, she said, "This is a very interesting case. Because Miss Freeman signed a one-page agreement, Mr. Flynt is winning this, but this would probably be very good in appellate court. I recommend you take it to appellate court and appeal." So as we're walking out of the courtroom, Woody Harrelson says to me, not really Woody Harrelson, you understand that, says to me, "Oh, I don't do appellate work," and walked away from me. So I had to decide what I was going to do. And I had reached out to an appellate firm in Beverly Hills. And then I said, this is going to eat up my life and I'm going to let it go. And then by the time I decided to let it go, I got contacted by the appellate, this firm, this really heavy duty firm that we're really interested in this case, and I let it go. So I'm telling you about it to show you I'm not afraid. If someone really crosses me, I'm not afraid. So that's my Larry Flynt story. Actually, there's one other thing that's funny. It's like a bump, and it is humorous. So when you lose, you have to pay their court filing fees. So that meant like I had to pay Larry Flynt $275, and I'm a secretary. So I just picked up the phone and I called his attorney. And I get the attorney on the line and I go, "Hi, I'm Carrie Freeman. I just had this suit against Mr. Flint and I lost." He goes, "Oh, yeah. He was pleasant." And I said, "So listen, I didn't like the way my lawyer handled it. And what I would have, my point of view would have been, can you, even with a signed agreement, turn PG material into X-rated material?" And there was a pause on the other end and he went, You're good. That's a really good point." I said, "So here's my reason for calling. $275 is pocket change to Mr. Flint, and it's quite a bit of money to me. And it shouldn't have been done. Why don't you drop the $275? And he said, "Okay." That's it. I didn't have to pay anything. So that was the bump to the Larry Flynt. So one of my learnings here is, all right, so what happened is I get a phone call from someone who's been a book designer for me and who's hired me to help other authors, because a lot of authors can't write their own biographies or book descriptions. It's like too close for some people. I can do it for myself, but not a lot of people can do it. So she had hired me a number of times, and each time it worked out great. And there were things I didn't even know about. I mean, I did a whole project on Native American art, and I had to learn about it. Just came out great, blah, blah, blah. So I had worked with great success with this book designer before. So she calls me and she says, "I've got this job and he needs 4 essays. He needs a bio for the inside and the outside of the book and a book description for the inside and the outside of the book. And he's written nothing because he doesn't feel he can. And I think you're perfect." And so the guy called me and we chatted. And she said to me, "Just kind of leave me out of it. He doesn't know we're friends." And I thought, well, that's weird. She's never said that to me before, but okay. So I take on the job and I tell him I need to have an interview with you, which he paid for. But during the interview, it really wasn't an interview. He lectured me. He lectured me on a lot of things I already know. And he wasn't the least bit interested in my background. I made the mistake of telling him the truth. And here's the truth. I said, I actually don't need to read this cover to cover to write what you need. I said, "Trust me, I'm gonna go deep into the book, but it's not necessary." And he fought me on that. "Oh no, you really need to read it," and blah, blah, blah. And I didn't fight him. I just said, "Look, I've done this enough. It's up to you." And so he hired me. All right. He hired me. So I'm looking to see what I want to share with you. She called me about 2 or 3 weeks into the project, and she said, "I know you're psychic and I know you profile people. what do you think of this guy? So I said, well, I think he's creepy. And the gist of the book, which I'm going to tell you in a minute, is that he's healed. He's healed from trauma. And he's going to tell people how he healed. And it was through massive amounts of drugs. All right. That's how he claims he healed from childhood trauma. And from what I read, the childhood trauma looked really bad. But I said to her, I'm not comfortable with him. He really doesn't have good communication skills because he lectures. He doesn't talk. And I found it very difficult to learn about him through having a conversation with him. And she said, oh, I know, he lectures me too. I said, but I got to tell you, I want to do the best possible job here, as I always do. And I want to stay as far away from him as possible. That's my intuition. So this was like 2 to 3 weeks before this disaster happened. All right, so I got a deposit from him. I invoiced him. I got a deposit. And the deposit wasn't that much. It was $690 because I was building this thing from the ground up, and there'd be 4 different essays. Received the money. And by the way, legally, that's an implied contract. You know, an invoice and being paid, that we enter into a contract. So I found him in our interview arrogant, not forthcoming, very tutorial and teaching me things, and I didn't learn that much about him. There were things that I asked him questions and he just shut down. Okay. So I'm looking at my so I did send the bio that I wrote to the book designer. And even though she didn't really want it, kind of wanted to see if I was in the right, ballpark. And she either told me verbally or wrote back, boy, you really nailed him. But I would change one word, and it was a good suggestion, and I changed the word. Then while I'm working on it, I kept getting texts. How's it going? How's it going? How's it going? And it was very annoying. And I tried to tell him, just kind of let me do my work. But it was clear he has anxiety and he was rushing me. Now, she wasn't rushing me. She had to do a whole bunch of work on it, but he was. So I finally texted him and I said, do you want me to quit writing and you can just pick up the rest of it on your own? Or do you want me to continue? Oh, no. I want you to continue. Okay. So I continued for 3 or 4 more days. And then I went, and then he wrote, I don't want to get sticker shock. All right. Now, this is the moment I want to tell you about sticker shock. He lives in upstate New York on 14 acres in like a $10 million house. I have proof of this, by the way. So this guy didn't want to get sticker shock. So this is his second book. His first book was a clone of a Ram Dass book, and it wasn't original at all. And then this current drug is a long narrative about how drugs cleared him of his fraud. So it's a memoir and it's a narrative, and it goes into a lot of abuse and his thousands and thousands of journeys with drugs to heal himself. Sent it to him on a Friday, didn't hear from him, and my left ear went, uh-oh, something's really wrong. On Monday, I texted him, would you like to have a consultation? Talk about fixes, edits, no charge. And I got back, check your email. And I went, oh, this is really bad. So what I received from him was a complete rejection letter about all the work I had done. And he refused to pay me for the remaining amount of the work, which is close to $1,000. The book designer told me she thought it would probably come in just under $2,000, so I wasn't over. I didn't gouge. And what I received from him was insult after insult. so he wouldn't have to pay. It was very much gaslighting because it was how dreadful my writing was and how I didn't get him. And I knew from my work in therapy, and I knew from my left ear, that it wasn't about my writing. And I'm going to own this. I said to him, I actually don't need to read the book from first word to last word to do this. And because he is not healed, because he is a traumatized human being, and God knows what has happened to his prefrontal cortex that makes decisions and executive function, what happened to that through all the drugs, we don't know. But it got worse. And then, so I wrote him and I just said, look, I kept it very unemotional. First of all, I didn't even know that you don't get a refund when you get an invoice and you pay an invoice and it's a deposit. That does not come back to you. It's a legal thing. He didn't even know that. By law, I don't have to return money to him, nor would I. But the abuse was extraordinary. It was incredibly ugly, accusatory, like daggers. Well, I wrote him back very calmly. I didn't do it back. I just said, look, I'm a writer and I'm paid to write. And you gave me a deposit. I finished the job. I delivered it to you. And it's not contingent on whether you like me or you like what I delivered. And I offered to discuss with you, make fixes, and you would not speak with me. And then he wrote back a worse letter to me, telling me that my writing is abysmal and blah, blah, blah. So what I want you to know is that I actually went into a traumatic state when this happened. I went into like real honest to God shock and trauma because of the amount of energy that came at me. And even though I had a bit of a rough childhood, I've never been abused like this. I've never met anybody that was this ugly and brutal. And it was very glaring to me. Oh my God, this guy is putting out a book where he's healed. And I have, this incredible. So because I like to, writing is my thing, among other things, I started a letter. Now, let me just say why this is part one. I sat with just my left ear and quiet. I went quiet. And the guidance that I got as of right now, except for making this and hearing your comments, to not do anything through the holiday, to just kind of calm my nerves. It was more about the abuse because I know who I am as a writer. And it doesn't mean everybody would like a bio that I wrote, but I don't write abysmal. I don't write abysmal. And so this was very personal. I mean, he went after me. So I wrote, this hasn't gone out. I'm just sharing with you. So this, if it becomes an article or I send him a letter, I don't know what I'm going to do, but it's called Writer Beware, a Cautionary Tale. All right. So I wrote him, by refusal to pay me for the work I delivered and refusal to meet with me, speak with me, edit, supply notes, negotiate, you have given me license to write about my experience here in a most entertaining way. This kind of true and outrageous narrative is perfect. I have a media presence and my YouTube channel. The title of my piece is copyrighted, by the way, and I have an intellectual property attorney on board. So I went through, I'm just talking to you now, not reading. I went through some of his huge major comments and I just remarked, so I'm just sharing it with you for fun. He did write back to me that I had this tremendous lack of humility. So in light of someone insulting me, refusing to pay me, eat up my life for 3 weeks, because you know I even went away from YouTube, he told me I had a lack of humility. So I wrote in red, your lack of humility. And here's my answer. My humility, which is abundant, has no place near you. I didn't do anything wrong. That said, humiliation is your thing. You know humiliation. It's the gift that keeps on giving. And unless resolved, the victim becomes the victimizer. And you've done this to others. You have victimized other people. This is what I know. And then he wrote, I'm disappointed in you. He's 20 years younger than me. I'm very disappointed in you. And I went, well, dude, I'm disappointed that you stiffed me, a professional writer, out of $951. You're not my Buddha. You're not my higher power or whatever. You're not a superior or anyone I would model. Save your disappointment and save your arrogance. And then I went to abysmal, because he said you're an abysmal writer. So I went, okay, this is a tell. It's overreach because you feel rage. And by the way, I felt very pressured by your constant texts and your anxiety about your sticker shock. And let me say something about your sticker shock. It makes you sound like a guy who lives in his mother's basement and eats Kraft mac and cheese like Brad Pitt in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Do better. You are very manipulative. And then he had written, you don't get me. So I answered, your mother didn't get you either. You are lashing out at me because you feel rejected. This is classic projection. From the moment I said, I actually don't need to read your whole book to write a good marketing piece, you hated me. You felt rejected and you responded like a little boy. I've been told by several esteemed writers, no, Carrie, you don't have to read cover to cover to write a good marketing piece. And then others said, this is a very hard writing gig, by the way, building someone's jam from the ground up, moving parts, and it's very complex. And then I went, you don't get me. By the way, when I interviewed you, it was not an interview. It was not. It was a lecture. And it was very revealing. So I think that's all I'm going to share with you right now, because this is a lot to take in. So I'm in process. I'm kind of trying to calm and center myself. The book designer, who had been a very good friend, has not called me. So this is part of a lesson that I want to relay to you, that if I was sitting with someone and coaching them, I would say, don't assume anything. Just trust your instincts to float and get back to your good health, get back to your calmness, your confidence about what you do well and what you offer people. So that's where I'm at with part 1. And then I'm thinking maybe part 2 next week. I'll process some more. We'll see if anything new comes up. Yeah, a really lousy experience and challenging experience coming at the end of the year, no doubt. But I also know, and this is, everything happens for a reason, honestly. Everything happens for a reason. So I'm open to receiving. And that's that. Now, tomorrow is Christmas Eve, and there's Christmas on Sunday, and some of you will be celebrating Christmas. Some of you have been celebrating Hanukkah, and some of you haven't been celebrating at all. But I just want to wish you my gratitude to you, and safety and blessings, and stay healthy, and then just make peace, make good memories. And thank you once again. Very much. Thank you once again. Okay, bye-bye.